All right, here we go. So that's what he said, episode 5. We're in person.
We did it.
Come here, man.
We did it.
Nope. Come here. Come here, brother. It took us 5 weeks. We are, obviously still in COVID, but we wanted to do this one in person. And look at us. We got
We're moving out of the world.
Got a legit microphone. So. This is evolution. We're going to figure this out. I don't know if this is going to be the right form. We're still trying to figure out the audio and the visuals. So
yeah, let us know what you think of this episode, how we're doing it, because we don't know. We're trying it.
So our thought is, because we're going to be transparent, like we're going to talk to each other when we ask questions, but then the answers are going to be toward the camera, and we'll see if that works out, right?
Yeah.
So
you're like the third person with us.
That's right.
That's our goal.
So really appreciate the feedback. Mike's got a bone to pick with. You want to elaborate?
I would just appreciate some feedback on the YouTube channel or the Twitter channel, any channel besides this guy's Facebook, because I don't have Facebook. I don't get to see those comments. He's not very good at letting me see the comments. So I'd appreciate it if, you have a comment, just you're already watching the video on YouTube, just leave it right there so I can see it too.
So I appreciate that.
Plus it would help us out.
We are trying to get the message out, and in all honesty, even going back to what we talked about when we first started this, like it's been very, I've looked forward to this every single week, and I know we're a little off with our timing a little bit, but it's been great. But every episode that we post, we get, I post it on my personal Facebook feed. Mike's not a big, at least at this point, Facebook, Instagram user. He's big on Twitter, but we would really appreciate YouTube comments. We've got the Twitter account. We will probably at some point expand into having our own personalized Facebook, Instagram page. But just a couple of comments that we've gotten per episode has been really cool. Like we were talking before we went live with this one, just some of the feedback we've got that we'll address tonight. And it's just super cool. Like we never really anticipated, trying to cater our episodes to what people were wanting to talk about, but we can't help it. Like it's awesome. Like we have enough stuff that we want to talk about, and that's why we kickstarted this. But as we get people that are like, oh, that resonated, or hey, if you can talk about this or that, like it just kind of encourages us and motivates us. Like we want it. So like, please keep doing that.
Yeah, definitely. I love to talk. So when I hear people have comments and things they want to ask us, like I'm ready to answer all questions. So yeah, I love hearing the feedback. So when he finally sends me the messages after a week of me asking, it's great. I love it. So yeah, keep them coming. Like whether it's complaints or switches of what we do or just topics or anything, like I love it. I want to hear them all.
All right. So for this episode, and again, we've kind of laid the groundwork for the last 4 episodes about kind of what got us to this point. So we really want to transition. And I was talking to Mike, for this episode, I think it's important to, like, I love this guy, and he's meant a ton to me. You need that person, and I think we've touched on that in the last couple of episodes. Like you have to have somebody that you can confide in, that you can feel comfortable in. And it's not even going so much back to our divorces, but it's the stuff that comes up post-divorce, relationships, kids stuff. Like Mike is one of a handful of guys in my circle that I can always count on, that there's zero judgment, that is always very level-headed. So I appreciate you for that. So I just want to share the love on that one. But part of that is because this guy has gone through as much trials and tribulations as the next person, and you're 8 years now removed from your divorce, which at this point I wouldn't even say although that was a big turning point in your life, I mean, there's a lot of things that have happened since. And when I talk to you, you're just what I always like about you, and just anybody that I come across in general that has this, like, you're always going to have stresses in life. And, I think of it as a pendulum. Like, people can swing from positive emotion, negative emotion, but like the people that can regulate emotion and kind of keep it even kilter, and kind of go with the flow, process, regulate. That in itself is a skill. So, and I really do feel like you have that. But then also, like, just this passion and drive of like, this is what I want to do, and this is kind of where I'm at in life, and I'm singularly focused on these handful of things. Like, I feel like you're at that point, and I'm not saying you're like a perfected, person. I'm sure you got plenty of shit that you want to work on, but when I look at you and think about you as a person, like, those are the things that come in mind. And so I just wanted to kind of give you the forum to talk about where you feel you're at right now, and then for this episode, kind of reverse engineer from 2012, when the divorce happened until now. Like, 8 years, there's a lot of stuff that happens, like how you got to this point. But to level set, like, just kind of explain like where you feel you are mentally right now.
I mean, I would say mentally, I am the best I've been probably my entire life, like, bar none. Like, I have gone through so much, just through the divorce, losing my job, losing my house, losing my family, losing my life, basically, is what I felt. Um, I've been in some dark places, and 8 years removed, and through not just the divorce and things that happened then, but through some relationships after. Some were super bad, some were good. It's got me to where I am so focused on the goals that I have for myself. I mean, there's nothing that can stop my mindset now. I mean, like, it took 8 long years to get here. And there's lots of things, lots of lessons learned. But at this point, I am so focused on me and the kids and what I need to do for just us. I couldn't feel better, like, I mean, at all. Like, I am so accepting of everything right now. It feels good. It feels like I don't have this weight of approval, or like I need to do this. Like, I have these goals, and it's not goals for anybody but me. And it's freeing. I feel I feel the best, like, the best.
And we're going to kind of dive into it, but the one thing that has piqued my interest with you saying that, because I, through books and other things, like, talking about for me, like, when you talk about like the goals I have for myself, like, how do you approach like the goals for yourself? And like, because I feel like when people are like self-care and like I'm happy for me, it's like, if you can't be true to yourself, then like you're never going to be successful with anybody else. So like, when you think about like what are those goals each month, or like, I know, like I know for you, like, you have long-term goals of what you want to do for your career and all those things, but like, how do you break it down to maybe more manageable scale of like, hey, I feel like week to week or month to month I'm making progress?
Honestly, I mean, I think it's just, man, that's a tough question. I would say week to week, month to month, I just focus on what's in front of me. Like, I don't, like, I have long-term goals. I have like a end game, obviously, especially with my career and stuff like that. But what I basically do is I don't allow myself to like search and want like more than what I have going on. Like, I appreciate what I have, and I'm not like looking for like the better part of it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But like,
yeah.
Of course I want to be in a relationship. Of course I would love to like have that companionship again. Of course I would love to have the schooling that I'm doing now done and over with, and like, live where I want to be living right now. And all the stuff that, like, if I think about like in a long run, it'll start making me feel anxious and make me feel like, oh my God, like, I can't do all this. This is too much. But like, focusing on the day by day stuff, the just the week by week stuff, like, it just helps me like breaking it down, like not thinking of the like have long-term goals, but not thinking of them long-term. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. Like just stay focused. Don't let distractions in that I know are gonna distract me, because I've learned what distracts me. Like that's another thing. Like I've learned my distractions. I understand that somebody could come into my life and completely wreck what I got going for me because of how I can be. And not that I don't trust myself, but I don't trust myself enough to just dive into something like that right now when I'm so focused on what I'm doing.
Yeah, and that's we're gonna dive into that because I think there's a lot more to that. Before we get to that point, courtesy of I think some feedback that we got from the last episode, let's talk a little bit about as you are transitioning into what your new life looks like. It's you and your kids. There's still some ancillary relationships that you have, whether that's friends of your past life that all things considered equal, like you would still probably have them, whether that was truly friends, family, the parents of your ex. Those are things that, regardless of maybe what happened within the relationship, like you still may want to continue those, especially if it was a long-standing, multiple-year type thing. And that can be tough, and not so much in like, hey, I want to text and hang out with you, but then it's more of the holidays and the birthday parties. Like, how did you navigate that?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's something you don't think about when you separate or divorce with somebody. Is it's not just them, it's the whole family that you've known with them. It's the in-laws, it's just all that stuff. And that's like a part of it that you don't talk to the person, you guys don't do things together as much now that you separated or divorced. But like, what about these other people that had no say in any of it and you still care about, and they still care about you? I know at first, we still tried to do everything together. I mean, it was, somebody's, one of our kids' birthdays were coming up, and we had a party together because we thought it would be the most normal for the kids to have everybody together. But what I started realizing is it didn't just make it normal for the kids. It gave them false hope that this would be still their life. So I kind of, we talked and we kind of came together where it was like, this isn't right for them. Like, it makes us feel better for them, but is this really the best for them? So, and those relationships with in-laws, they get close when you're together, if you have a good relationship with them. And it's another hard thing to know that you're just not talking to them anymore. I mean, 1 minute you're with them all the time, like, whether it's family events, birthdays, or you're just going over there to hang out. And then all of a sudden you're like the Black Plague, like nobody wants to talk to you, nobody wants to see you, like they don't know how to act around you, and it's super awkward, and you don't know what's like acceptable, what's okay. Like, am I allowed to hug them? I hug them every time. All of a sudden now I don't know if I'm allowed to hug them. Like, all these weird things that come up that make you feel so uncomfortable. It sucks. I mean, it's really hard. And I will say, like I said, at the beginning, it was a lot easier to just pretend everything was normal, and you knew it wasn't. And then eventually, you had to come to the realization you had to divorce kind of them too. Like, you just had to let them go, and that's tough. But like anything we've said through this whole thing is, you may not have that relationship with them, but like, as far as with your kids and stuff, like, always say good things about it. Always talk good about it. Like, you just make sure they understand that although you're not together with them anymore, like, it's not the same. There is no hard feelings. You're not hating them. I think that helps them get through it, in my opinion. That's what I think.
Well, I don't think there's any specific playbook depending on people's situation. Like, hey, here's how you go about this. I think time will tell.
Right.
Circumstances will tell. If it's a cordial is the wrong word to use, but if it's an amicable divorce, like, maybe it's easier. If if it's not the case, like it's probably going to be cold turkey, and you're not going to have an interaction with that extended family ever again,
Right.
if not for many years down the road. So like for you, you talk about that from when it happened until when maybe, not to say it got weird, but like just kind of talk about like, I mean, is there any specific stories or instances where like, hey, like 8 months, 16 months, 2 years, like once I started doing this or that, like it became pretty evident that like this is my new life, and like I really need to put this, behind me.
I don't know. So like I started feeling that way, and then something super tragic ended up happening where an ex-in-law died, and it was a really hard thing because, again, like nieces, they're no longer, you're not in the family anymore, but you still feel very attached to them, and they're younger, so they look up and they look at you. And when something tragic happens, it kind of just, you feel so bad if you haven't been more involved with them. So then after that, something like that happens, you start feeling like you need to be more involved with them. But at the same time is when the person you were with is moving on, or you start moving on. Like if you end up getting in a new relationship, it seems really weird that you talk to them still, that you are still involved with them, because they're really not part of your life anymore. And it's so weird to say, because they were part of your life and you cared and you love about it, you love them. And that doesn't go away, but it's almost like you realize that you're no longer needed. It's not your place anymore. Like that's not it, and it's a hard pill to swallow, and it can, it can mess with your head a little bit. But I mean, you have to look at it as the big picture. Like they were your family when you were with that person. You're not with that person anymore. Even though you still have those caring feelings and relationships with them, it's not fair to the person you were with. Like that's their family. And like, let's say they're in a new relationship and you're over there trying to like hang out with them. Like that would be, upsetting for them, and vice versa. If you were with somebody and you're hanging out with your in-laws, ex-in-laws, they may look at it like, why are you with them?
Well, so like here we go, man. Like let's get into it. So this is this is kind of the crux of it, because I'm gonna assume, because I know this is the case with me, that the extended family, your family and her extended family probably had some inclination, but they didn't have near the full story of what led you to the point where like you guys are gonna split, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So there's that. So the news breaks that this isn't gonna happen, like we're done, regardless of the reasons. And there's a natural, like emotional shock, understanding of that, not for so much you, but like just the extended family. And then depending on how quickly the parties move on and other people get introduced, that's a whole new dynamic. And that in itself can, like when you talk about like, hey, I've interacted with these people, I've communicated with these people for years and years, maybe a decade plus. Who knows what the situation is? All of a sudden, we're like, we're not together, split, and it could be a relatively speaking short amount of time before like some new experiences or people get introduced, and like people don't, because they don't understand like what happened, like now that becomes very tricky, and like you want to like, and you don't want to get in the midst of it because you don't want, I mean, your kids are your most important thing, and like I'm not going to try and get caught up in all this stuff. Like that becomes kind of challenging too.
Yeah, it does. And you have that feeling of you want to talk to them, like they didn't do anything, like there's nothing with them. They were just like, because like the unfortunate, like you
can't talk to them the same way you can talk to me.
No,
like you could like like this and that, but like them, like, but you like at the same instance, like you're closer to me, but like it's a different closeness with them, and like maybe you'd want to say like everything that you would tell me, but you can't.
Yeah, like 100%. Yeah, you would want to tell them everything. You would want to explain. You would want to do all that stuff. But like at the end of the day, you have to realize that when that divorce or separation happens, it includes them as much as it sucks because you could care about them. And like I said, that what happened between the two of us had nothing to do with them. Yet that's part of it. And it's honestly, it's not a part you think about, but it's a part you feel for sure. And it's honestly even more awkward and weird to navigate through because you still have those feelings for them and you want to like still talk to them. You want to know how they're doing. Like you used to ask them all the time how they were doing. All of a sudden now you're not allowed to ask them. It's a really weird and feels not right kind of feeling. And I think if you're respectable enough, like with everything that's going on, and you still from time to time just shoot them a text or I just want to know you're doing good. Like I know all this is weird. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But you got to be respectful. You got to understand what's going on, and it's just kind of you got to play it by ear. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, it sucks.
And I think that with our situations, there's so many other people that it's just not the case where it's, let alone can I not be amicable with my ex, like let alone even think about what that relationship would look like with our extended family. We're fortunate enough now, especially with these years that are past, that we can explain or exchange pleasantries, birthdays.
And
if we see them.
It may be a little awkward, but it's not as bad. Yeah,
absolutely.
Then you got some people whose, in-laws might have been the problem. They're fucking glad they don't see them. So, everybody's different. Some people might be happy they don't get to talk to them anymore. So,
all right, Mike. So let's get into it then, man. So let's transition. So you're rolling along. You are whatever amount of time, and it's going to the specifics. Like, let's talk about your first foray into post-divorce relationship. Like, I think this girl, let me rephrase that. This woman is does it for me. Like we connect and it's gotten past the point of the honeymoon phase, and we can she realizes my situation and like just kind of talk to me about like what that experience looked like.
Well, I will say it took several years after my divorce for me to get to that point. I realized I am very slow and steady with my dealing with things, which I guess is good. Like I didn't just jump right into anything. I may have jumped into like relationships, but not like where I'm like in the relationship. So, like I said, it was probably several.
Well, can I interrupt real quick?
Yeah.
Because this is probably a good clarification point, because we've talked about this. When you say in it from a relationship, like what at this point in your life, or you can take us back to like the instance that you're explaining, like what would you classify as like relationship? Like what is that like? The differentiation between like I kind of like you and I'm talking to like, all right, like you're in for me. Like I'm sharing this stuff with you. You're in.
So honestly, I guess the easiest way to describe it would be, I actually open up. Like I actually talk to them about how I'm feeling about stuff. I'm not like this kind of not standoffish where I'm like a dick or rude, but I'm just not how I am. Like I'm more guarded. There's obviously could be some physical stuff, but it's everything's so shallow. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like it's not deep where we're getting to know each other, where I'm letting them in, like I'm talking about my kids with them, like any of that stuff. Like if I'm mentioning my kids to them and I'm talking about like things I do with them, they're getting in. Like they're getting a part of me that I don't just share with any stranger because I think they're hot or something like that. Like it's got to go more than that. Like it's got to be where I'm ready to like let them in and give them a chance to like, I guess, hurt me. I guess that may be the best way to put it. Like maybe I didn't think about it like that at the time, but like, I was so guarded. There was nobody going to hurt me, like, for years after that. So several years later, I finally got to that point where I was feeling you know, to the point where I was like, man, like I need that in my life again. Like I need somebody I can talk to about my bad days, about anything.
Do you feel like with where you are now, it's been 8 years, with where you are now, let's say that point that you just talked about was 3 years post-divorce, so 5 years ago. What is the difference between where you are now from where you were 5 years ago as you look back and be like, I need that, I want that? Like, when you sit there and thought, because like, that's one of those things, like, everybody kind of heals, everybody, human nature is like, you want a connection. Like, you want to find that person, and depending on kind of where you're at in the process, like, your judgment can be clouded a little bit. So, like, where do you feel like you were, let's call it 2 years post-divorce, or 2.5, 3 years, maybe, versus where you are now? Like, explain your mindset then.
I think then I was still dealing with a lot of depression and a lot of like self-worth issues, where I just felt like I failed family, I failed at providing, I did all the things like us men feel like that's our responsibilities, and that I failed in. Like I was still kind of self-loathing and constantly feeling bad about myself and what I was doing. And, it took me a long time to get out of that. Like that itself was several years to finally like understand what happened, to not completely blame myself, and to forgive myself, and to allow myself to stop being in this mindset of woe is me, I'm so sad, to, okay, like I'm feeling better. I started working out a lot. I started getting really good shape. But like my focus was on finding somebody to fill the void. Like that's where I was at.
All right, so like, we promised ourselves like we would be real with this podcast and like talking about this stuff, and just it's easy for me to scapegoat because I told you like this one's gonna be about him. So like, I appreciate you saying that. Like, you can at least recollect back in that moment and say like, yeah, like I was dating and meeting people, but like I still wasn't probably where I needed to be. Like, be honest in the conversations that you would have during those dates or with those women. I'm sure, like, tell me your story. Like, what's what are your experiences been? Where's your mindset at? Like, what was your talk track? Like, how did you respond to that? I guess.
Like the women before, I was ready to like.
Yeah, like, so you talk about like where you are now, like the conversations that like, and how open and honest you would be maybe right now, versus where you were a couple of years past. Like,
it was probably a exaggerated facade of what I wanted to be. Like I was.
So you would talk about.
I would talk about how I was this, I was that. I'm so focused on my career, and I got this. All these things that I thought made me sound like somebody a girl would want to talk to.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel any of it. Like I knew, I was keeping afloat, but I wasn't where I wanted to be. I felt really bad about myself. I was working out. Physically, I felt really good, but mentally, I was a fucking shit show.
Yep.
And I would pretend that I wasn't with these girls. They would ask about me, and I would tell them little things, but nothing. I wouldn't tell them I was divorced. I didn't tell them I had kids. Now, it wasn't like I was lying to them and telling them I was like this, but like I would definitely dance around the subject. And if they specifically asked, and sometimes I did, I would let them know the situation. But for the most part, though, I put on a fake face, and I just wanted that instant like gratification, or instant like this person's into me. Like I'm not a complete loser right now. Like I got this person liking me, even though I knew I didn't feel like I was like giving them like the real me. I mean, it was really me, but it wasn't at the same time. I don't know. Like I think everybody can relate. You kind of just. I wasn't like bullshitting or lying to him. I didn't tell him I had like made $1 million in the fucking bank or something like that. But like I wasn't like, I got divorced. I'm feeling really down. Like I want somebody to talk to. None of that shit came out. And, I feel a little guilty about maybe some of the ways, but for the most part, I was always respectable, but it just wasn't me.
Yeah. And like, I mean, I know you fucking, I mean, to the core, like you're a good dude. Like, but it's a, um, I don't feel like you're alone. Like, I'm not sitting there saying like I'm not guilty of that by any means. And like, I think that's the struggle point, man, is post divorce, you have a void and you feel, um, you feel like that, there's a failure point there, and whether, you know, whatever time period that passes, you, you can find the solace in what you're doing with your kids, but at the end of the day, like, like to have somebody, and it means for whatever reason, like you can find it at work, you can find it in friends, but like to have a, you know, opposite sex, like shower you with the affection or whatever, like if you're not of the right mindset, it can just consume you. And like it can be so easy to portray like, oh yeah, like I'm so like I'm in such this amazing mindset and I'm fine. And I think that's, I mean, this is going to be the foundation, I think, for like hopefully future interviews we have with other people, because I would love to get some of the other people's perspective on this. But I think that in itself is the crux of a lot of the problem is like, one, people are, it's a struggle to be super honest with where you are mentally, and there's a fear behind that, and probably rightfully so, because then like there's this judgment factor of like, oh, they're not here or she's not there or whatever, and like, and that is of the essence of like people that are in our age category post divorce, just trying to be so real about like, hey, this is kind of where I'm at and I'm just trying to be truly honest. And it's really really tough, because if you like, I'm not trying to put us on a high horse, but I think we are at least self-aware of that.
Yeah.
And if you can have that conversation, that's the first step. And then finding somebody that's self-aware about that and like can kind of meet you halfway and at least have a conversation. It's tough, man. Like, cause people deal with, and it determines on their trauma and what they've dealt with and the circumstances. And there's a lot that goes into it, but I mean, it's just, there's a lot of variables that go into it.
There's so many variables. And honestly, I'm only where I'm at now. Unfortunately, I mean, happy I'm at where I'm at now. Unfortunately, though, it was from a relationship and things that I did that I am more ashamed of. I'm more ashamed of stuff I did in this relationship than I have been in my entire life. I mean, it is things to even talk about. It's hard to admit that I actually was thinking this way, or I did these things where it's not me at all. And to know that these are the things that I did when I finally came to, and you know, I know we'll talk about it eventually, like the relationships post divorce, like specifically, it's stuff that lit the biggest fire in my ass. I mean, ever, of just being like, what are you doing? Like, I went from self-loathing to like kind of feeling a little bit better about myself to thinking I needed to fill the void with a new relationship. I needed somebody to give me validation, to, you know, a good relationship not working out, to another relationship that I thought I wanted that was so toxic and bad, it nearly ruined my life, to where I'm at now. And all those things had to happen for me to be where I'm at now. I don't want anybody to have to go through these things, because let me tell you, it was the worst time of my life. And I've already been through the divorce. We've already talked about that. And some of the things I did and some of the things that happened are just, it doesn't make any sense to me now. Like, in the mindset I'm in, I can't even believe. But it's basically what I'm trying to say is, you know, it's everything is a work in progress and everything is hard to get to. And, if there is bad things going on, it doesn't mean that you can't be where you need to be mentally eventually. You just have to learn from your mistakes. You have to, and you may not learn from them right away. You may be in it and you may not think they're wrong, but when you finally get out of it, you will realize how stupid you were. And I could talk for 4 hours on this subject. I mean, forever. But yeah, my mindset where I'm at now is only from the trauma and the stupid things I did. And honestly, a lot of self-reflecting. I mean, tons of self-reflecting, tons of being honest with myself, tons of no bullshitting myself, tons of none of more me feeling bad for myself, no more like making excuses, no more blaming anybody but me. I had to own up to everything that I did on everything to get where I'm at now, where I'm so focused that I feel like nothing can touch me. I'm where I need to be. I'm doing what I need to do. I'm not where I want to be yet, but I know I'm on that path, and there's nothing that's gonna stop that path.
So, this is one of the things like you've told me this, and like I want to document it on our podcast that you've told me like, hey man, like you've got to sit through the pain. And for the longest time, I fucking hated that saying. I hated it saying because it's like, I am such a littler person that's like, all right, when you're like, oh, you gotta sit through the pain. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna sit here. I'm gonna put my head down and I'm gonna think about it. And he's like, no, don't do that. And for me, I'm a very analytical person and I think about a lot of stuff. And he just got frustrating. He's like, no, you gotta process it a different way. And for me, I mean, I was one of those guys for the longest time that I knew something was wrong. I knew something didn't feel right. And my reaction was like, well, it kind of feels weird. Like, I'm not going to address it. I'll just put that one aside. I'll bury it. And that's so common. I'm sure you've done that in the past. And I'd like to think that we're both better. You were a lot better. I'm serious. But I mean, I would think in general, like, I'm just saying that men in general, like, that's a big problem is it's easier to bury and not address. And that's such a problem. And hopefully if we can find one person, one man, especially through these conversations that maybe changes the way they think, like, that's a success because it's a generational thing. Like, you just get brought up, at least the way that we did, that's kind of normal. Like, it's not normal. Like, it's not, and it's not just with the relationships, it's with everything. Work, family, friends, interpersonal. Like, if you can't talk to yourself about that stuff, and it's so frustrating, and it's taken me a long time to kind of realize it. And I think you bringing light to it has helped me a lot. But like, if you can't have an honest conversation with yourself and understand, like, emotions aren't bad, like, they're just natural. That's part of being human. But if you allow them to rule you and you just react as soon as an emotion comes in, it's not gonna lead to the outcomes that you want. Like,
Yeah,
it's not. Like, you've got to figure out a way to feel that emotion, to take a breath, realize where it's coming from, and then, like, what do you do with it? And yeah. I mean, it's taken me 37 years, and I'm not like, it took me this long to realize that, and it's going to take me a while to process it. But the fact that I've at least realized it is progress. But like, Mike, I'm telling you, man, like, and I give you a ton of credit because I think I've been lying to myself for a long time that I've allowed emotions to rule me and not give it enough time to breathe and, like, realize, like, okay, that's fine, but, like, what does that mean? And it's a skill.
Yeah, it is a skill. Well, think about it too. Think about how we grew up. Emotions aren't something we're even supposed to have. We're not supposed to be emotional. We're guys. We're supposed to be strong and ignore those emotions that we have when we're kids. Like that's what if that's not directly what we're told, that's what we feel like as boys growing up, that we're not supposed to have feelings like girls do. Those are girls' things. They have emotions. We're like physical. So when we have them later in life, we don't know how to handle them because we push them down. And when you're kids, you don't have anything that's emotionally that like significant to you. But when you're in a relationship and you have these feelings that you're not used to controlling and understanding, if you don't understand them or know how to like deal with them, they can cause havoc on you. And it takes a lot of work, like you said, to actually understand what that is, what that feeling is, and not misinterpret it, and to actually deal with it and not let it like make your decisions for you. Because, you know, obviously emotions aren't the best way to make decisions. And yeah, I mean, I really feel like that's what most of it is. And unfortunately, I had to suffer through so many years of figuring it out, but like, it's not, you don't have to suffer to figure it out. You just have to understand what you're feeling, understand how to handle the feeling, interpret it with your brain, and not make it this thing where you just feel it and you don't actually like come to some sort of understanding about it. And yeah, it's a skill and it's something everybody can do.
So I'm going to ask, because we can talk for all night. Like, let me ask you this to end with. When you think about, like, we just talked about skills and it's a learned thing. When you've gone through, you know, the trials and tribulations of the last 8 years, when you think about like how I'm going to kind of just consider my thoughts and process and look forward, like, how is it that you're able to, with everything that you've experienced in the past, just kind of like a mindset of like forward thinking of like, this is what I want, like, just, I mean, I guess, because I really want this to be, and maybe we'll pull in the guests, maybe we won't. Like, there's a lot of things I want to talk about from this episode, but like, as I guess a teaser, like, how does your mind think of like, all right, when I wake up in the morning or when I just think about this or that, like, instead of dwelling on this shit, like, I'm going to think about that going forward.
I think, honestly, what's got me and how I think now is knowing how I was when it happened. I knew that I had my thought process when I first got, you know, when first was divorced, separated, was just, I need to fill a void. I need to fill a void. I need to do this. I need to do that. All these things that were going to mask how I was feeling was my mindset, whether it was a new relationship, whether it was just somebody to be around, somebody that called me, you know, hot, you know, whatever it was that I needed at that moment was what I was trying to do. When I went, the reason in my opinion why, you know, things didn't work out was I got depressed and I kind of just gave up and my brain wasn't where it needed to be. Seeing how I was then and seeing all the things that happened after, I know if I'm not where I need to be myself, I'm not going to be able to give somebody the me that they need or the me that should be there. So I now look at it as not, I need somebody to fulfill me. I need to fulfill myself, get me ready. And then I will be able to have a relationship that's perfect. Not perfect in when we don't, but I mean, it's like perfect as in there is nobody that needs to complete me. I've already completed myself. And now I just need somebody to partner up with me and we can do it together where they're good, I'm good, and we can move on. Honestly, I feel like I've figured that out now. Like, I don't need somebody to make me feel good. I got to do all that. I got to get me where I need to be and find somebody that's in the same spot, and then we can live together in that way. And I think that's why I'm so focused now. I know that's what I want, and that's what I'm gonna get. I'm not going back the way it was. Like, there's no you need me, I need you. It's I don't need you, but I love that you're with me, and I want us to spend our life together, kind of thing.
I love it, bro. All right, man. Hey, till next time. Got a lot of stuff to go on from here. Hey, so I'm not going to do it because you're the one that gets mad. Like, you want to publicize the comments and feedback, or do you want me to?
I mean, yes, please comment on the YouTube channel that you're watching at this moment if you have something to say. Or if you want, you can send a tweet to TWHS 83.
I mean, seriously, anybody that's watching this, please, just, for that guy.
Or if you send it to him. I'll just get on him more. But please send it to him.
Till next time. See you guys.